Welcome back. UK Prime Minister Theresa May signing a letter last night that is expected to be delivered to the European Union in just over an hour. Once received, it will officially trigger Article 50 and begin the process of the UK exiting from the European Union. Joining us right now is PwC U.S. Brexit response leader, Mary Shelton Rose. Mary, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
The impact of this, the trigger of Article 50, tell us.
Well, the most important thing is we've now started the clock. Right. What businesses had hoped for was a soft and quick exit. What all indications are now is that we're headed for a long, hard, complicated, messy, and expensive divorce. And I think what we'll know next is, as the EU sets the rules for negotiations, it's going to take a couple months before we really have any sort of clarity around what life after 50 might look like.
What industries get impacted the most?
Well, all industries are impacted, really, that have operations in the UK and Europe and that do business in those territories. But certainly financial services, pharma, and a number of other industries are impacted.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to take away from this, too, is that the EU is worried about taxes. And we saw after the British referendum happened, McDonald's announced that August that they were going to move their non-U.S. tax base from Luxembourg to Britain. So they're worried about it becoming a tax haven. You even had the Chancellor of the Exchequer talk about they are confirming that they are going to continue going from 20% corporate tax rate to 17% by 2020. Theresa May say that could even go lower. What do you think that impact has on several of the businesses that we've just talked about?
Well, I think there are many impacts on the businesses we've talked about, right? And a lot of this is to be determined and figured out over time. And I think the most challenging thing about Brexit and the environment is the prolonged level of uncertainty that we're going to need to deal with here, and also the compression of the timeline. I mean, it feels like 2 years is a long time to negotiate, but in reality, it's going to take a while to figure out the divorce, and then we're going to need to figure out what the future looks like, and then there's a process at the end where it needs to be ratified. And so I think the uncertainty around that and the environment, both in the UK and in Europe, are going to drive significant challenges for businesses.
What does it do to the economy there in the interim?
Well, I think for the economy there, you know, the markets have proven to be pretty resilient. You know, the pound has continued to be down. I think there will be some impact to the economy there, but it's to be determined as to how significant it will be at this point. I think there will be some impact, but again, it's a period of uncertainty that we're going to have to navigate through.
It's hard to know.
You use an important word there, which is negotiate. Over these next 2 years, you know, what leverage does May have to, you know, in terms of negotiating how to handle the $60 billion exit bill and negotiating a path forward on trade? What leverage does she have in these negotiations?
Well, I think both sides want a deal that is going to be good for business and good for their citizens while respecting what drove this vote, which is, you know, the issues around immigration and otherwise. So I think both sides have leverage in this discussion.
Okay. So we know that several financial institutions, Goldman Sachs, have already warned that they could take jobs out of London as a result of Britain leaving the EU. Goldman reportedly told staff that no major changes are imminent, but the economic impact on the city could still be huge. But you mentioned during the commercial break, it's not just financial services. There's a real supply chain issue. Tell us about that.
That's right, Maria. I mean, we're going to have a customs border here where we've not had a customs border before. And then we may have incremental tariffs as well that apply to supply chain. So when you think about the implications of additional costs, the implications to logistics for companies, it could be significant. And what we're seeing companies do is start to use Brexit really as a catalyst to really look at their underlying operations, their cost structure, you know, the locations where it's most desirable for them to be in. So the supply chain dynamic to this is very important to several industries.
Could we see the inverse actually happen? They have a well-educated workforce. The pound actually has come down to lows we haven't seen in decades. Could we actually see the opposite of where companies actually come and start to move in to the British economy due to the fact that they do offer that, as well as the low corporate tax rate going to 17%?
We could see that, and I think there's opportunity for the UK in this, you know, good opportunity for the UK in this as well. So, yes.
Guys, we got to talk about Scotland. Okay?
Yeah.
And then there's Scotland. So Scottish Parliament voted yesterday to request a referendum on independence. So while Britain is leaving the EU, Scotland wants to stay in the EU and perhaps leave Britain. this could take place before the Brexit process is complete. How does this play into things or change things?
Well, I think the vote that happened yesterday was, it was expected that that could occur. I think May has been pretty clear that she wants to negotiate on behalf of all of the UK. So I think it's a to be determined as to when and what will happen with Scotland.
Talk about more complexity. What currency would they use? Would they use the pound and try to stay with Her Majesty, or would they try to defect and go and start to use the euro? That's a big implication. The Scots. So that, I think, is a big overhang that would actually make it not happen until they leave the EU.
Interesting that they feel like they want to stay in the EU.
They voted for it.
They don't want to leave.
Overwhelmingly, the Scottish voted for it to stay in.
Those Scots.
Yeah.
Wow. Mayor Shelton, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great insights from you. We so appreciate it.